I'm Kyle McParlin, the YouTube videographer of Global Social Media Marketing, and today I'm conducting an interview with my boss and the CEO and founder of Global Social Media Marketing, Benjamin Kepner. So Benjamin is really a boss that thinks on all cylinders and kind of pivots based off of what our clients want, our customers want, what the media landscape is looking like. And I'm really excited to hear his thoughts about starting and founding a company and managing it and really maintaining relationships with people and employees alike. So, hey there, Benjamin, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Kyle. I'm excited to do the interview. And if Kyle's professor at UGA gets to see this, please give him an A+ on this. He's doing a great job.
Pretty pleased, pretty pleased. Yeah, so I guess just to get started, I'd really like to know about your background before Global and before you became an entrepreneur and decided to start something for yourself. If you could kind of walk me through the jobs and the responsibilities and the positions that you had in the past, and then kind of your journey that led you to start a social media marketing company.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but really, I graduated from the University of Georgia in 2011. So go dogs. And graduated with an international business and marketing degree. I also minored in Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. So really kind of a global minded guy. I wasn't even doing social media in 2011. It was really just kind of becoming a job then. My kind of dream when I graduated from UGA was to go live in China, or eventually go to a Spanish speaking country and really get fluent in those languages, because that's where a lot of my time was spent at UGA. I was spending a lot of time just note cards. If you ask any of my roommates, I think at the end of my journey at UGA, I had like 8,000 note cards that I had made in Chinese and in Spanish. So that was kind of my direction. And then once I graduated, it was kind of, I came out, funny enough, right now, obviously, a lot of graduates are going to be coming out during the coronavirus, but I came out during the housing market crash of 2008. So actually, when I came out of college, very similar to how a lot of people are going to be graduating now, the job market was just as worse as it had ever been since the Great Depression. So they weren't really hiring people at that time, especially a college kid. I didn't really have an awesome internship experience with a company like Global Social Media Marketing or anything like that. I had done some things in Athens, and I actually worked for free for 6 months after I graduated. I worked at the largest bilingual organization in Georgia. It's called the Latin American Association. And that's really kind of where I owned my social media skills. I was doing everything in English and Spanish. I was getting to talk to a lot of the Hispanic leaders in Atlanta. Things like CNN, Telemundo, these kind of like Hispanic media outlets. And then shortly thereafter, I got an opportunity with two companies at the same time. So I kind of had my first social media like professional gig, where I was kind of a contractor. I was like dubbed the social media strategist for a medical device company called Optech USA. And then I would literally drive every day from Lawrenceville, Georgia to Atlanta to go do my other job with a company from another UGA grad that started a company called Insight Pool. And that's really kind of when I like started to realize that social media was going to take off. My medical device company, they gave me a DSLR camera, which is really funny saying that like 9 years later, because your phone can shoot just as good as a DSLR camera can, back in 2011. So they said, Benjamin, here's a DSLR camera. We're going to give you a MacBook Pro, and we want you to make videos. Do you know how to make videos? And I said, nope. And they said, okay, well, you're going to learn. And so that's what I did. My social media career started in video. I taught myself how to edit, film, shoot. I started making YouTube videos really early on to kind of teach people how to use medical device products. We were selling like ACL braces where you could, normally in the medical profession, you'd have like an instruction manual that you would read, and I was turning those into videos. And then those would benefit the sales reps instead of having to wait in a hospital or a doctor, right? They're not attainable. We could just shoot them a video and they could see the device. And then, that was just super powerful at that time in 2013. The other company, Insight Pool, really taught me a lot about influencer marketing, and that kind of transpired. And so I kind of went from there. I went into a number of different like independent contractor roles. I spent some time at the Atlanta Convention Center, which is like the largest event like wholesaler in the United States for like all of its events. So think about things like rugs or jewelry. They used to have these home markets, and I was actually doing a lot of video stuff there too. I was managing video walls. Video walls are those things that you see at like Philips Arena or like on the side of like venues. And I had a software from a Germany company where I was like projecting like animations on these huge video displays. I was doing like social media, and then I got burned out. I was driving like 2.5 hours every day from Alpharetta to Atlanta because I was a poor, like, post grad kid, didn't get any full time job offers, still like 3 years out of college. And I was just like, you know what? I really still want to be fluent in Spanish. So I moved to Spain. I got accepted to be a English teacher in Spain. I went over to Spain for a year. Amazing experience. Lived in a small town of 10,000 people in a place called Galicia. And actually, the official language there was Gallego. So I like went over there to Spain thinking I'm going to get fluent in Spanish. And then I got, dropped in this random town in like Northwest Spain. And then I was like, every day I was hearing three languages. It was English, Spanish, Gallego, and got really into surfing. And then kind of I had my camera too, right? So I was really getting into kind of more video production and stuff there. Unfortunately, my father passed away while I was over there. Just as a side note, this is kind of his anniversary of when he passed. So it's very fitting that I'm doing something on leadership. I look to him for a lot of like what I know about leadership. And then once he passed, I finished everything out. I traveled all over Europe, and then I came back and had a hard time finding a job after that still. And eventually I wound up finally in my first full-time job in 2015, like 4 years after I graduated. And it was with $1 billion travel company called Tarico Holidays. Really cool experience. Went through a lot of different things. They sent me all over the world. I went to Spain, Latin America, Europe. And eventually, like, I tried to get a visa to be a full-time sales manager in Spain, managing the fourth largest department store in the world, which is called Viajes El Corte Inglés. And they just couldn't get me with a visa over there. So they sent me back and they were like, hey, Benjamin, you know all this stuff about social media. Can you start a social media company or department? And so I did that for them. But then shortly thereafter, like, I didn't really like living in Orlando, Florida as kind of like a young millennial. So I went back to Atlanta, spent a lot of time working with like pro sports leagues after that. Went to like NBA, NFL, NHL, NCAA, and just didn't really like, came back to Atlanta just weird, just like, I'd been in Spain, I'd been in Florida, wasn't the same vibe. All my friends were getting married. And so I went to Denver shortly thereafter, saw my favorite band, and the rest is history. Moved out to Denver. That's where I live now. And I took my first job with a food science company, which is complete 360. So then I started making all these like new beverage and food products through like organic soluble ingredients. And I was working with, those big guys out there, right? Like Starbucks, Red Bull was one of our clients. Like, it was a really cool opportunity, but they actually let me go. And then in 2017 is when I started my own company, and it just came out of survival, really. I mean, nobody would hire me for a full-time job, and I was getting all these freelance jobs. And then when I filed taxes, my accountant was like, Benjamin, why don't you just turn all of these freelance gigs into a company and create an LLC? And here I am today, 2 years into the company, and we have a 10-person team, and it's been a great journey. And it's like I almost finally created my own full-time job. So that's kind of my story.
That's amazing. And it sounds like education has been a real factor for your journey and kind of growing as a leader and as a person. So kind of transitioning into global now, what do you do for creating a not only enjoyable work environment, but a productive work environment? How do your day-to-day activities go? And how do you think that education has played a role in that? I know that's a loaded question, but maybe if you could just talk about, education in relation to global now and your day-to-day activities.
Yeah, I think again, like I'll probably refer to my dad a lot in this interview because he really kind of instilled a lot of these leadership qualities in me. But he just kind of taught me in high school. I remember I was taking Spanish, and he owned his own insurance agency, and he just said, Ben, like I can't communicate with half of my customers because they're all Spanish speaking. Like he was getting all these Mexicans, and he said, if you do one thing in life, son, get fluent in Spanish because it will just open up so many opportunities for you. There was so many people that were moving to America that was speaking Spanish at that time, and so it's kind of funny, right? Like I remember the day I got in to be an English teacher at Spain. My dad reviewed it. He was so proud of me. He was like, "My son's going to Spain." And then yeah, it was just kind of like I think he instilled that in me of like if you're a lifelong learner, knowledge is power. And so I just have always kind of just kept what he taught me in my head. And then for global, kind of what I did was like it was kind of like an organic shift. Like my approach from starting a company is way different than a lot of other people. Like it was just me, and then I had like one or two like people that were my age that were kind of like they had full-time jobs but they just wanted like a side hustle. And then like I remember very vividly like a year and a half ago I was in the Terry mentorship program. There's like a Terry like connect program through the business school where you can connect to alumni. And one of the people that I connected with, he's like, look at my resume. I looked at his resume. His name's Jonathan Schuster. He actually lives here in Denver now. And he was like, I really need experience, Benjamin. Like, what should I do? I was like, well, you could work for my company. And I was like, I can get you internship credit. I can help you build your resume. And, if you do well, maybe there might be a potential to like make money. And like, he went through the whole internship process and he was graduating. So obviously he didn't get to stay on with me to benefit like a lot of our current team gets to benefit now. But it ended, and then what ended up happening through all of that is what I like reconnected with Terry like what was it like 8 years later, where I was talking to the marketing advisor and they were like, wow, this is awesome, like you can give marketing students like an internship experience to get class credit, and then if they do well, like they're getting real world experience, maybe you can hire them. And so that's how that kind of evolved. It's like I went back into education like where I graduated from, which is like I love the University of Georgia in Athens, and then like seeded my own internship program. And that's really evolved now to like now those interns are becoming contractors. And then like from the educational side of things, like, dealing with college kids is interesting to say the least, right? They've all got their own different things going on, from fraternities to sororities to sports to partying to UGA football games. Like, I get it. I
Right.
went to school, and so what was probably the biggest thing was with one of our current team members, Fashawn, who's our digital marketing manager, was he was like, Benjamin, he's like, he wrote his like capstone marketing class report, and in his report, he was like putting out the weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses that he wrote was like that global doesn't have true marketing experts. Like it's got a lot of these younger college kids, and Benjamin has 10 years and we're not Benjamin. So like I realized at that time that like I couldn't expect college kids to know what I know, and I needed to teach them what I knew. And so Vashon was really that first person that kind of pushed me as a leader and said, Benjamin, like, I don't know this stuff. Like, you got to teach me what you know. And so we just started doing weekly calls. And then what ended up happening was like, hey, Benjamin, like, I don't remember that. Can you record this? And so I started recording them. And then finally it was like, wait a second, why don't I just turn these into YouTube training videos? And that really revolutionized, I think, our company in the last year. I put out like over 100 YouTube videos in the last year now, and that has really, I think, helped our team grow and really kind of educate and take all that education stuff. So I think it's probably a long-winded answer, but it was definitely an evolution, and it's cool to see the UGA and the Spanish education now transferring over to YouTube, which has become like the number one way I teach people.
Yeah, it's really amazing that you found a way to not only educate your staff for the company and pretty much have an effective like training regimen for them to go through, but also you can repurpose that for training and really educating the general public about social media and social media marketing when those clients out there or those people out there might not be too familiar with it. They might have a goal for their business, their small business, and even if they don't get a contract with you, they still might be able to grow their revenue and grow their brand and whatnot.
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
that's
Yeah. So
that's
it served dual purposes, right? It's like I created my own in-house training program through YouTube, and I've also used that YouTube videos to now empower our clients, be transparent, and that really separates us from a lot of other marketing agencies, right? Typical marketing agency is going to send you an invoice, do the work, not tell you how they did it. At Global, one of our values is we're very transparent with our work, and we want to empower business owners. If they are not happy with our services, at least we want to teach them more about social media on how they can do it successfully themselves. And I think that earns a lot of trust with our clients.
that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about the day to day for your position as CEO and founder, and
Yeah.
maybe some of the responsibilities and maybe some of the stressors that you have to deal with that maybe I don't see, maybe
Yeah.
from an outside perspective may not be as obvious.
Yeah. I think sometimes dealing with college kids, again, nothing against college kids, I love them to death, but when they tell me they're busy, that drives me nuts. You guys are in college, you've got class and tests and things, but like in the real business world, right? Like, I own a company. There's a lot of things going on, right? From financing to accounting to recruiting, hiring, managing people, doing the client work, doing sales. There's a lot involved with that. And I think my day to day, you know, I'm not probably the typical CEO where I have a routine. And I think that's what good leaders do is they build routines. And I'm trying to get better at that. But I think my personality, I'm just very dynamic. Like today, for example, right? I got out of bed. I had like a smoothie and a Cliff Bar because I didn't have time to make breakfast because I had to go to a call immediately. Went into that call. It was with another agency founder through the Accelerator Academy I graduated from. She was in LA. We were talking about how we could potentially partner. I left that call, went to a former client that burned us and kind of helped with that relationship, made sure they had all their social media credentials. Left that call, went immediately into another tech support call with CallRail, who's one of our partners now for phone call tracking for our client ATA Travel Services, because there was technology integration issues, and then went straight into my interview with Kyle today. So it's since this morning, I haven't really left my desk. It's just been one meeting to the next. And I think as a CEO, you have to figure out where is the best use of your time, because you can't be everywhere and you can't do everything at once. But being really strategic about, what are the things that are going to push the bottom line results and what's going to grow the business. And sometimes some of those things are things that you don't want to do, right? Like I'm going through the whole tax season thing right now. I didn't graduate with a finance degree. I'm not a CPA, but I've had to teach myself that stuff. I had to go apply for the SBA loan right this past week for the coronavirus so that I can make sure that I can pay all of our employees while the economy right now is kind of having a market failure. So I think those are just some good insights for you on, some things that happen and some of those stressors. And I won't go too much more into other stresses there. I could probably talk about that forever.
Sure. Yeah. So this is a great, really point, because I picked up on it earlier. You said that at Global, one of our values is to be transparent with our work and show people and clients and everyone that, hey, this is how social media works. These are marketing principles. This is how this works. And we can do it for you, or you can learn and teach yourself. So if you could elaborate a little bit more on Global's values and really how they developed and how you came to them. I know you said that your father really was a leader role model for you. So yeah, if you could just describe a little bit more about the values that Global holds towards its customers.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, a lot of the values that I created for the company, you kind of hit the nail on the head. They're really inspired by my father, and my upbringing and just my mother and everything that they taught me. So, things about like education, right? Be a lifelong learner, knowledge is power, growth, like having a growth mindset. That's probably like the second biggest thing I teach everyone on our team is like, if you're not willing to grow with me, you're probably not going to stay long term with us because, like, what a good leader does from my perspective is it empowers people to make them the best they can be. And you can't make someone the best they can be if they just stay in a fixed mindset and they're never challenged. You have to put them outside of their comfort zone. You have to give them more responsibilities. Positive, I'm a very, optimistic, positive person. There's a lot of science around, if you're a positive leader and you have a positive mindset, that you're more creative and you actually get more stuff done. Health and wellness is kind of something more of a recent thing because I've lost a lot of weight recently in the last year or two, and I think that's just from all this stress. I actually weigh less now than I ever have in my entire life since high school, so that's a little scary. So
Wow.
I'm trying to work on that, eat more. Obviously, it's hard to work out right now during the pandemic, but that's something also I've communicated to our team members, like especially during the coronavirus right now. I've communicated go for walks. It's important to have mental health. Check in with your friends and family. Collaboration is another one of our values. I want our team to be working together. I saw an awesome, picture on Instagram this week with Kyle and Evelyn and Vashon and Anna, where they just had a quick hangout call. And I love seeing that stuff, right? Like teamwork, I think, is how you make the dream work. You can't be a successful company with just one person alone. It takes a real team to kind of reach those goals. So collaboration is crucial. International, I don't think I have to explain that too much, right? The name of our company is Global Social Media Marketing. My major was international business. I've lived in Spain. I've traveled the world. I want us to be as international as possible. Transparency, we've already talked about that. And then the last two are generosity or generous and community. My father just kind of taught me that good networking comes from giving first, not selling or asking for things. And then that also really ties into the community. So, like, being involved in your local community. I'm involved with the Mile High Young Professionals here in Denver. They're the largest young professional networking group, and they really empower Denver people. They do a lot of philanthropic things like that, giving back, volunteering your time. Those are really things that I think a lot of companies may miss the boat on, and I'm trying to instill in our company.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I know that one way that you instill it is through our weekly calls, talking every week about, not only what needs to get done, but why it needs to get done and stuff like that. Um, what do you think? What do you think helps, people my age, like college kids, grow the most? Like working with the past employees and current employees like Vashon, like Anna, what have you seen to help them grow from the beginning of their internship phase to the end of the internship? And then if they proceeded further than that, what do you think helped college kids grow the most?
Yeah, I think college kids, like most college kids, number one, they want experience, right? Like they are already coming to me with like almost not even having their first job sometimes. So it's like giving them that business introduction of like, hey, this is the real business world. This isn't like fantasy UGA. Like there's deadlines, there's priorities, there's you know, I'm not going to yeah, there's going to be outcomes too, right? Like if you don't do a good job, then we can lose a client and it can impact our entire company. So I think kind of teaching those things. And then I think the other thing that you mentioned is having a why, right? Like, why do we do things? I think a lot of managers focus on the what do we need to do today? Like we need to make 20,000 in revenue, but why do we need to make 20,000 in revenue, right? So I think tying that back, especially too from a marketing perspective, right? When we do client work, like, Kyle and I, we do a lot of cool YouTube videos, and I always challenged Kyle on like, why are we including this in video, or why are these statistics important in this video? And I think that has really kind of, I guess, given people like a belief in like, I believe what Benjamin believes too, because he's explaining why this is important.
It's
Yeah.
if you let me interject here,
Yeah.
it's pretty funny that you mentioned that because sometimes when I get edits from you about like what is the purpose of this video? Where is the call to action here? Where is the, because it's almost like you're the voice on my shoulder that's giving me the business aspect of all this stuff. And it's funny because sometimes when I get those edits from you, I get annoyed. I'm like, oh my God. But after I make the edits, I time and time again find myself saying, yeah, he was right. Yeah, this makes more sense.
Right.
And so, I can really attest to the fact that it really does only come with experience, that kind of perspective on how does this affect the bottom line? How does this, move the consumer further down the buying cycle? How does this, allow our clients to get their message across? How does this, promote our message, whether we're doing a fundraising event, or we're sponsoring something, or we're putting out a message about, staying safe and staying home during the COVID pandemic. Um, it, that business perspective is really a skill that I've noticed that I've had to really exercise. And it's just, it takes time. It takes time to learn. It really does. So
yeah,
I appreciate, even though it may frustrate me sometimes. That's my own problem,
Yeah, but that's what every college kid is going in. They think they know everything, and they're hearing all these philosophies in university, which is great. Like, that's why you go to get educated. That's self leadership, making sure that you have a college education, making sure that you're, you've got the knowledge to have a skill set. But to your point, the experience thing, in my experience now, like 10 years out of college, your experiences are going to overweigh your education long term, and you can't teach that. It's time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really, it takes a lot of time to develop that, and I think that's the most interesting part of it. What do you think develops a good young leader, whether it be like myself or anyone on our team? What do you think really, or even here, let me phrase it like this: when you're going through the interview process for maybe a new candidate for the internship or for a part-time position at Global, what do you look for in that person?
Yeah, I think number one is work ethic. I think pretty much everybody on the team, from a college perspective, I had to teach them what good work ethic means. And I think a good leader, if they have work ethic that's better than everyone else on their team, when somebody goes to the leader and says, I'm busy, or, I'm stressed out and I can't do all these things, if I'm working like 100 times harder than everybody else on the team, which is what I kind of hold myself accountable for, then my team has no excuse or reasoning to say, like, wow, like, I'm working harder than Benjamin, because that's what I do as a leader. I work harder than everybody else, so that everybody is inspired by that, and they realize, like, wow, like, look how hard Benjamin works for us to be successful. That's what I need to be doing, right? So I think that's the first thing, and I think that comes with maturity. Like, the older you get, like Farron, for example, he's our COO. He's more mature. He started his own company. He understands what it takes to create a company and do those things. But I push him too. Like, I tell him all the time, like, Farron, you need to get that contract signed with Kyle to make sure he's on our team. Or, I'll push him to make sure that invoices are being sent on time. So I think, young leader or old leader, it's always about having good work ethic and being consistent. I think I had to teach that to a lot of the people on our team, because maybe they'd have one good week and then to have one bad week. One of my favorite leaders is LeBron James. I mean, the guy is just a stud when it comes to his work ethic. Everything throughout his career, he is just consistently waking up early, eating healthy, training, working out, doing basketball camps. Like, the guy is just like the epitome of my like leadership hero outside of my dad. So I think he's a really good example of a great leader, and he makes all of his team members better, right? So I think that's one important thing for a young leader too, is making other people better. So, like, for example, with Kyle in the interview, he's making other people on our team better by making videos, right? One cool thing that's evolved now that Kyle's on the team is I've got other people making videos finally, right? Vashon's made a video, Monty's made a video, Anna's made a video, but Kyle has served as a young leader by saying, hey, I understand what Benjamin wants in this video. I'm going to collaborate with these team members, and I'm going to empower those team members to have their first YouTube video. Like, I was really happy just yesterday. Monty was so excited. She's on YouTube now, right? And she's nervous. She told me she doesn't like public speaking. She doesn't like doing that stuff. But working with me and Kyle, that was a really good way to kind of put her out of her comfort zone. And now we have a really good video on the internet.
And now whenever she does another video, showing a client or a customer something, or just doing a fun video for YouTube just to promote our brand and whatnot, she won't feel as nervous the next go around. She'll be more used to it and stuff like that. Definitely.
Yeah.
What do you how do you distinguish between management and leadership, in global and maybe out of global? How do you think about those two terms?
Yeah, so for me, management is more of a title I never try to use with my team. I hate saying the word management because it seems very corporate. I was in corporate America, and I think manager or management titles is like this glorified title that people are climbing in the corporate world because they want that title, right? Somebody told me once, which was really kind of depressing for me. One of my friends said, anybody can start a company. Anybody could be a CEO or a business owner. And I kind of took a step back because when I became like an owner of a business, I used to think, oh, CEO, right? Like that's a really great title, and it has benefits to it, especially on LinkedIn. I get a lot of messages simply because my title says CEO. People reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn. But that's just a title. That doesn't mean that you're a leader because you have a management title. I think what management does is it's a place in the organization where you're responsible for managing projects and certain individuals to have outcomes for the business, versus leadership is a more general broad term that actually is really like, you can look at a lot of people as leaders that don't even manage people, right? Look at like Gandhi, for example, right? The guy like starved himself and like was one of the most inspirational leaders of all time. Or look at like Martin Luther King, right? Where he was always saying, I believe, right? Like that was a belief where he was going through that really historic time in history. And he was saying like, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. And if you believe me, like if you have the same beliefs as me, that's what a leader does, right? It's like finding the people that believe in your vision and follow you, and you know how to inspire and motivate those people. And so I try to be more of a leader in our company than a manager, because I think a manager is kind of more narrow-minded and thinking more about like what's good for the organization, whereas a leader is more of a visionary and they're really trying to inspire and motivate people behind their vision.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more powerful too when you have it's almost seems like firmer ground when you have a belief, something that you and I can get behind. That way, you're not dragging me in one direction. We're both pushing in the same direction.
For sure.
If you could elaborate a little bit more on leadership and maybe global's vision for the future. I don't, maybe not in a perfect world, but what is your vision for global and what we could do in the future?
Yeah, I mean, my vision is definitely to be $1 million company. Number one, I mean, my father created a $2.5 million book of business, and I feel like, he taught me to be very competitive because I was super into sports. I pretty much did every sport, and I was in karate for a really long time. I did Shotokan for like 13 years of my life. I was like a state champion. I did basketball for a really long time. I was supposed to go play like college basketball at Brown University. I had an offer. I tore my ACL like right before I was supposed to try to go out there. So like, I think for me, I'm very competitive because of sports. But I also look at my father again as like a huge inspiration of like, I got to get to 2.5 million. Like I got to beat Dan Kepner. If I can beat him, like I'll be happy. But I think as time's evolved, I don't have to beat my father or get to 2.5. I want to just create a company where I have a team that I enjoy working with and they can support me, because right now I think the biggest struggle for me is like I'm the only full-time employee. Everybody else is part-time. They might be working 10 to 15 hours a week. My average work week is about 80 to 100 hours a week. So, I would like to not be working that amount of time. I'd like to get back to like 40 to 60 at some point. I'd like for us to be $1 million company. I'd like for us to be doing social media in every country possible that we can. I'd love for us to be working in every industry that we can. And for me, I think the long term vision is I really want our YouTube channel to become one of our top revenue streams. I think that YouTube is exploding. We've made a lot of videos, and I see these YouTubers now making $10,000 a month, and all they do is make videos. So I think kind of the model that I would envision for global is right now we're more of a service based model. But as time goes on, I want us to become a product model where actually our videos become products that we sell, either through like training courses or their premium videos that you have to, like, with YouTube Premium, you have to pay for those, right? That's kind of how I see our model evolving, and then just becoming more international and better talent. That would be kind of my vision.
Wow, that's a big vision. You just made me more excited. So that's great.
Yeah, some people told me I have too big of a vision, so we'll see how that goes.
Screw them. Who cares? So to accomplish that, we've been talking about leadership obviously throughout this interview and stuff like that. But to accomplish that big vision, you have to pull from your guns. You have to pull from your strengths. So what would you describe as your leadership strengths? The skill sets that maybe you've learned or that you have, whether it be teamwork or whatever it is, that help you to like move forward.
Yeah, I think for like leadership skills, I think communication for me, I think I've learned that at UGA, but then I also like learned that in relationships, like even with like I've only had one girlfriend in my life ever. And I just remember with her just saying like communication is key, communication is key. And then when we fell out of communication, the relationship got worse. So same thing with my company. Like I've noticed with like with my team, right? If I don't talk to my team like at least once a week, then 2 weeks pass and they're just like they don't know what they're doing. They don't have direction. Projects are getting late. Like having great communication, I think, solves so many business problems. So like great communication as a leader, I think, is number one. The way that I do that is through like exactly what Kyle and I are doing right now. We do a lot of Google Hangout video calls, which are great. It adds more personability, especially us being a fully remote company, right? Like a lot of things get lost in communication via email and text. But when you can see somebody visually on, the other side, and you can see their body language or their facial expressions, that really does impact things. And I've had some really hard calls with some people during this, and I'm not going to name any people. They know who they are if they watch this video, but I've tried my best to be transparent with people too. I don't hide things. That's a company value, and a lot of leaders don't do that, right? A lot of leaders want to hide things because they don't want people to know the bad things. And for me, like it's my personality of just saying like I'm willing to be as vulnerable as possible to show you what I'm going through, so that you can trust me because I'm not going to hide something from you or I'm not going to lie to you. I think that has been a huge leadership quality. And then I think the last thing is just the ability to continue to educate my team, right? Going back to that value of education. If I'm not growing and helping my team learn and become better, then how can I ever expect for our company to be super successful if I'm not taking the time to educate them?
Right. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the not just the education of the team, but really the I guess it is the training of the team and the culture that you create for the employees. So like, when you bring someone on, say they've gone through an internship portion, they've learned the ropes of talking maybe with clients, of getting work done and presenting deliverables and stuff like that. Once they're maybe starting off as a contractor for global, how do you start to inform them of the company culture that we have here, of the collaborative teamwork environment? How do you go about establishing that company culture?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just having consistent branding and communication on all of our online presence, right? So that stems from our website, right? I always make everybody go to our website, go to the About page, learn more about our values, who's on our team, what's our history. Those things are super impactful. Like if everybody in the company understands what our values and our history are and who our team members are, that's a great start to understanding our company culture. From there, a lot of it is like in our messaging, right? So our messaging to our customers. How do we speak to our customers? Messaging on our social media, right? Like how Kyle had mentioned the stay at home, right? We want to be involved with the community and show that we're helping people and we're doing other things outside of just business related tasks. And then I think the other thing is me just being, the leader of the company, right? Like actually like every day I have to instill my vision into all of our team members every day and re-communicate those values. And in every project that we do, I try to do that. And that's what a good leader does, is like hammering in that consistent, like, these are our values. This is our culture. This is why we do this. This is why our customers like stay with us. And you just have to keep doing that. And hopefully as time goes on, people understand that culture.
Yeah. And another big point that I've really began to learn about Global is the fact that you do really empower your people, and you do really say, "Hey guys, I want to hear from you." We just had a call with one of our current clients, ATA, um, and the Travel Savings Network, and on the call, Benjamin was asking for my opinion on how we want to go about presenting ATA's solution to the public, how we want to go about, presenting a marketing message to these people about what do these people need, and about learning from, what the consumer would expect in a travel referral service, in a travel company. So, how do you go about empowering, whether it be new employees or employees in general, and giving them, saying, "Hey, I want your input," and giving them this, because you're really giving them responsibility, but you're also giving them a certain amount of risk and room to fail. How do you go about that?
Yeah. So for empowerment, like good empowerment is like, you have to give people responsibilities to be empowered, right? You can't just have someone doing the same thing over and over again, or else you're not really empowering them. You're just keeping them stuck in the same place that they're in. So, number one is giving them more responsibilities. And that is done through time based upon their ability to handle those more responsibilities and have good performance in doing the responsibilities that they've been given. The second thing is having resources. Great example of that most recently is for Kyle. I gave him a video library. He asked me for that 6 months ago. I told him, hey, I'll get this to you eventually. 6 months later, he's still with us. He got his video library. Like I know that the team needs resources like that, right? Like how Vishawn's going to need a stock image library here at the end of the month for the rest of the year, or how Anna needs training videos on how to do a rapid fire test messaging campaign on Facebook. She doesn't know how to do that. So I think, that comes back to having the resources, and then, but also having the education again. That's why the YouTube videos, I think like, that's why it's such a huge vision for me, because it hits like everything. It hits sales, it hits education, it hits training, it's like, those are really impactful. And then I think the last thing of empowerment is just, like being empathetic and understanding where people are at emotionally and where they are in their lives, and trying to give them opportunities that they don't even see, right? Like, I bet if you asked, for example, Kyle, like when he first started with me, he was very skeptical as everybody else, like, hey, who's this Benjamin guy? Like, I'm not going to work for this guy for free. And I bet if you ask Kyle now, like later on, like if he was happy that he made that decision way back when, he'd probably say that he was really happy that he made that decision to work with us. And now he is getting paid, and now he has a lot of responsibilities, and now he has all these resources. So that's empowerment to me.
Yeah. You outlined it great. That is pretty much how that went.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about leadership and developing future leaders. And it's interesting because on that last call with one of our clients that I mentioned previously, we were really starting to see the development of me and one of my coworkers as potentially the client facing managers, for lack of better words, for that particular client. So in that, how do you go about, developing us to get to the point where, hey, we can handle these clients, without Benjamin's help? We don't have to, to get us to the point where, it's almost like you're going to be creating or like mini versions of yourself in a way, because you're kind of, developing us to try to get us to a point where we can function with these clients and produce results on our own. So how do you go about developing us and pushing us to get to that point where we, if something goes wrong, we don't have to call Benjamin, we can handle it ourselves?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, honestly, like I think my model is a lot different. Like I'm dealing with a lot of college people. If I had people that were my age, right, like young 30s, they would have more experience where like I could just instill them and trust them. And that's like another vision that I have like for our company this year is I love my internship model. I love UGA. I'm never going to quit that. But I have realized as time's going on that I am going to need older people that have experience so that I don't have to be involved with every client, right? So to Kyle's point, I can't have Global become $1 million company if I'm managing every client. Like at some point that has to change. Right now, I don't have that ability because I don't have the pay to do that. But what I'm doing in the short term, and this would apply even if I had an older person, is I always start them with something global related. And what I mean by that is, I start them with internal things, right? So, for example, if you're learning how to do a Facebook lead ad, I'm going to have you do it for Global's Facebook page first before you have you do it for one of our clients. So I really instill in our team to kind of master and own some of their skills for our company internally, because at the end of the day, like if something goes wrong in our company, it falls on me versus if they do something wrong for a client, then that client is then maybe potentially going to stop doing business with us or it really hurts the client. So I kind of set that buffer as a protection for both the client and for our team so that I can say, okay, I'm the visionary and I know how to do all these things, but I'm going to teach the team how to do this internally first before I kind of open up the kimono to the clients. And then as far as the client work is concerned, like it's a relationship thing, right? So like for example, with our travel client, right? Like I'm well aware that Kyle and Anna are not in a place yet to be able to fully manage that client by themselves. They're just not. And that's okay. But that's me being a leader and understanding that and realizing where are the improvements that I can make Anna and Kyle better? What skills can I teach them? How many calls can I have them on and start to like slowly progress them to that point of full management and have them start to be a leader. Like, for example, like Kyle and I are starting to communicate more with our ATA travel services client where they're calling them one-on-one. So they're having that separation without me, right? So it's kind of like a gradual process for me. And I think that's kind of how I've gone about it. I mean, there's a lot of different approaches, but that's what I've done.
And so this is kind of a big question, but out of all of your time, at Global, talking with all these different clients and all this stuff, what do you think if you had to pick one, what would be your top obstacle or your top challenge that you had to face and that you, in your mind, really affected your leadership, in the past 2 years of working for and creating Global?
I think the number one thing for me is just support, right? Just that's a very generic term, but just overall support, like knowing that I have a team that can support me to get results, right? Because right now, I mean, I think our team is evolving and getting much better, and I've had people that have been on for a while now, which is great. But when you have people that are new to a company, they don't really know their role that well. They don't really know the business that well. Like they don't understand the client. So having support for me is how I'm going to scale. Like I'm one man. I can only be like I even told you like what I did this morning, right? Like I have taken no time to do sales today, but I need people that can support me so I can do more sales. So it's kind of identifying like, what am I good at? What is my team good at? What are things that don't drive the business? And how can I maybe, do more of the things that can help the company grow and let the team manage more of the client relationship? So I think that would be my biggest thing is like, and a lot of businesses aren't like that. That's just how our business is right now. And I want that to change. But in the short term, yeah, as being the only full-time employee, it's hard to have enough support when I'm being pulled in a lot of directions. And I'm also doing all the sales too. So, having a salesperson, in the future would be great.
Great, cool. And now that we're pretty much coming to the end of the interview, I do have one last question, but it's really not too related to the interview itself. It's more of a personal question that I just thought of and would love to know
Sure.
your your answer to it. What do you think would be something that you could tell me now that you would like to see me change so that I can better serve our clients and or the company? If you had to pick one top qualm,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be?
Yeah, I would say, having the jigsaw methodology is something that you probably haven't heard me use that term before, but I think that's something that you can do to get better. And that methodology is something that I learned from education, right? Going back to education, good teachers can teach people how to do things, but great teachers figure out how to segment different groups and have the students learn between each other. So a great example of that, right? It's like a puzzle, right? When you're putting a puzzle together, there's many pieces. And if I can have Kyle, for example, teach Monty how to edit videos, then Kyle has immediately just relieved himself of hours of work because he's empowered Monty to have that skill set. So I think same thing can be held true if you look at like any of our social media marketing plans. Whenever I start with anybody on our team, right? Kyle or anyone else on the team, they probably learned how to do a social media marketing plan from somebody else. That's the jigsaw methodology. And I think that employees, whether it's Kyle or anyone else, if they can teach people internally that are their colleagues, that makes them better leaders and that makes the company better because then the leader or the manager doesn't have to spend all that time teaching people how to do other things.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Benjamin, for allowing me to interview you and pick your brain about leadership and global and your history with it all. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to say thank you for having me, Kyle. And again, if the UGA professor sees this, please give him an A+. And really enjoyed this. And everyone for out on YouTube, please comment below if you guys have any ideas for leadership. I'm always trying to get better at that. I'm not saying I'm a great leader. I have a lot to learn too.
Awesome. Well, I'll cut off the video here. And thank you, everyone, for watching.